No one knew the janitor's secret past until the wrestling demo began. "My name's Walter. Just Walter." That's all he ever said when anyone asked. No last name, no backstory. Just that old, gravel-worn voice. As steady as the janitor cart, he pushed down the halls of Blackridge High School. Walter had been working there for 5 years, and not once had he been late. Never missed a shift. Rain or snow, there he was, quietly sweeping the gymnasium floor, replacing soap cartridges in the boys' locker room, cleaning up the mess after pep rallies with that same old denim jacket on, sleeves rolled up to his elbows and a limp in his left leg. He moved like a man who'd been through a war, but never said so. His eyes held something ancient, the kind of silence that screams if you sit with it too long. But he was kind. When Jeremy, a sophomore with autism, had a meltdown in the cafeteria, Walter was the only one who didn't flinch. While others stood frozen, Walter walked right in, knelt beside him, and whispered something no one could hear. Within seconds, Jeremy had calmed, wrapped in Walter's old flannel jacket. When Coach Dunn blew out his knee during morning drills, it was Walter who carried him to the nurse's office, picked him up like he weighed nothing. Yet no one asked questions. Maybe they figured he was just another invisible man in coveralls. Until that Friday. The Friday of the wrestling demo. It started simple. The school was hosting its first recruitment showcase in nearly a decade, inviting younger students to watch, hoping to revive the once legendary wrestling program. The bleachers were filled with loud chatter and the scent of microwaved nachos. Students leaned forward as Coach Ramirez, the new hire from Brooklyn, introduced the wrestlers. The mat was freshly rolled out. Light bounced off its shiny blue surface. Next up, Coach shouted into the mic, "Our very own state champ, Walter Cain, will show you some core takedowns. Get ready to learn from the best." Logan, a confident 17-year-old with a cocky grin, strutted to the mat. He was built like a tank and knew it. He waved at the crowd, then looked around. "Who's gonna be my demo dummy?" He laughed. Coach looked at the assistant trainers. None volunteered. Then Walter, who had been mopping the far end of the gym, slowly leaned his mop against the wall. He walked toward the mat. Slowly, his limp barely noticeable now. "No way." Logan chuckled, stepping back. "You serious, old man?" Walter didn't respond. He removed his jacket, then his hat, then unzipped the dark blue overalls. Underneath was a faded, sleeveless black compression shirt. His arms weren't just toned. They were carved. Scars ran down both forearms like battle maps. His shoulders were a roadmap of pain and precision. The gym fell completely silent. Logan smirked. "All right then, don't say I didn't go easy." The two squared off, and then, snap, step, drop, twist. In a move that no one in that building could even follow in real time, Walter spun behind Logan, took his balance with a foot sweep, locked his arms around the boy's waist, and launched him clean off the mat. Gasps. Screams. Logan landed with a thud, and Walter, he didn't smile. He simply helped the kid up. "Again," he said calmly. Logan hesitated, this time, eyes wide with something foreign to him: respect. They went again. This time Logan tried a double leg takedown. Wrong angle, wrong grip, wrong speed. Walter reversed it in mid-air, like it was choreographed by the gods. When he pinned Logan the second time, there was no applause, only silence, until a girl in the front row whispered, "What the hell just happened?" In the teacher's lounge later that day, Coach Ramirez sat stunned. He moved like a damn panther. he mumbled to himself, scrolling through grainy footage a student had recorded. That grip, that transition. Nobody teaches that anymore. Coach Dunn, the older football coach, looked up from his coffee. You don't know who he is, do you? Ooh. Dunn sighed, setting his cup down. Walter Cain, former U.S. Marine, Olympic alternate, trained with the Greco-Roman elite back in the late 90s. Used to be called the Ghost, because no one saw him coming. Coach Ramirez stared. Why'd he stop? Rumor says he vanished after Kabul. Some mission went bad. Never competed again. Why's he here then? Why mop floors? Coach Dunn looked toward the hallway, where Walter had just quietly exited, still limping. Maybe he's just cleaning up more than floors. Back in the empty locker room, Walter sat alone on the wooden bench. He stared down at his hands. Those old, scarred hands. From his back pocket, he pulled out a small, worn photograph. A little boy with brown curls on his shoulders, laughing at a park somewhere long gone. He looked at it for a long while, then folded it back, put on his overalls, and picked up the mop. The crowd would go home not knowing what they'd just seen, but the hallway whispered louder that day, and the past, long buried, had just scratched its way back to the surface. 2-2, it started with the video. By Monday morning, every student in Blackridge High had seen the clip. Walter, their janitor, tossing Logan Cain like a sack of flour. It had been uploaded anonymously. No captions, no context, just 38 seconds of silent shock, and 2.3 million views. Teachers pretended not to notice the stares. Staff tried to carry on like it was just another Monday. But the students weren't buying it. Not anymore. Because janitors don't suplex varsity champions. Janitors don't move like trained assassins. And janitors don't disappear into the hallways like they'd never been there at all. Sophomore Jeremy sat on the edge of the library table, watching the video on loop. He tapped it with a trembling finger. He didn't even look angry, he whispered. He looked like he was remembering something. Beside him, his sister Ruby nodded. Something he left behind. They were the first students to actually talk to Walter. After the video, he was fixing a broken door hinge outside the cafeteria, humming softly to himself. Same mop, same limp, same soft eyes. Ruby had approached him cautiously. Mr. Walter. He looked up. Are you the ghost? For a second, a flicker, barely a twitch in his cheek. I was, he said softly. Long time ago? That's all he gave them. But for kids like Jeremy, kids who never felt seen, those two words were everything. Because Walter, the silent janitor who once cleaned puke from the hallway without a frown, had become something else now, a legend. The requests started pouring in. Can you coach our team, Mr. Walter? Please teach us what you know. Will you run a clinic, even once? But Walter always shook his head. That part of me is done. And yet, one afternoon, Logan Cain found him outside behind the gym. No crowd, no show, just Walter cleaning a vending machine filter by hand. Logan cleared his throat. I wanted to say sorry, he mumbled, for laughing, for thinking you were a joke. Walter didn't look up. You fight hard, kid, he said, but you fight to prove something. That's dangerous. Logan clenched his jaw. I fight to matter. Silence. Then Walter stood, looked him straight in the eyes. You already do. You just forgot how to see it. Then he handed Logan a roll of white athletic tape. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. gym's yours if you show. And Logan showed. So did 4 others. Then 10. By By the end of the week, 26 students, boys and girls, were rolling out the old mats before the sun came up, waiting for the man who never raised his voice. Walter never lectured, never barked orders. He just showed them precise movements, balance, teaming, discipline. He spoke softly, like each word carried weight, like it was more than sport, like it was memory. He never bragged, never told stories. But when he showed them how to break a clinch or lock a grip, there was something in his eyes. Some fire quietly flickering back to life. The limp grew less noticeable, the silence less heavy, and the gym felt alive again. But not everyone was thrilled. Coach Darren Miller, Blackridge's head of athletics, watched from his office window with a sour jaw. A man who believed in pecking orders, who saw control as safety. He didn't like what he couldn't explain. Didn't like the way his students looked at the janitor now. And he really didn't like it when the school board called about offering Walter a part-time assistant coaching position. He's not cleared for that. Coach Miller barked into the phone. He's not even certified. Maybe. The board rep replied, but he's doing more for those kids than anyone we've seen in 10 years. 2. That night, Walter stood alone again in the locker room. He hadn't said yes yet. He hadn't said no. He sat in silence, watching the mop water swirl down the drain. From his pocket, he pulled out the old photo again. But this time, something was different. A note, folded and slipped behind the picture. He opened it slowly, hands shaking slightly. It was handwritten in blue crayon. I miss you, Daddy. I hope you come back from your war soon. Love. A lie? The ink was smudged near the bottom. Water damage from years of being carried close to the heart. Walter stared at it for a long time. Then, he wept, not loudly, not broken, but silently, like a man unburying himself inch by inch. The next morning, when Logan walked into the gym, the lights were already on, and Walter was there, wearing his old wrestling shoes, and a smile. Let's begin, he said. Back in the hallways, a rumor had started to grow. Something no student could confirm, but every one of them whispered that Walter had once saved a platoon from capture by using nothing but his wrestling skills. That he'd been captured himself, but never broken. That he lost his own son while overseas, and when he came back, he gave everything away. His house, his medals, his voice, and chose a mop over a microphone, not because he had to, but because he wanted to stay invisible. Until now. Winter came early that year. Snow dusted the rooftops of Blackridge High, the kind that muffled the world into a hush. But inside the gym, it was heat, breath, sweat. Something real had taken hold, not just among the students, but the school itself. What started as a few early morning drills had become a full-fledged underground movement. Walter's morning group had grown into a community. Misfits, loners, athletes, kids who had been one whisper away from falling through the cracks. Kids like Ava, who was homeless but still showed up before sunrise. Kids like Malik, who hadn't spoken to anyone since his brother passed, but now stood silently beside Walter, helping tape mats. Walter never asked questions. He just showed up, every morning, every breath, and soon, the wrestling team, once a joke, began winning matches. 1, then 3, then 5 in a row. It was Coach Ramirez's name on the record, but it was Walter's fingerprints in every hold, every stance, every comeback. The town started talking. The school started believing. And then came the announcement that changed everything. Blackridge High has been invited to the Tree State Invitational. a tournament they hadn't qualified for in 12 years. Coach Miller wasn't happy. Not one bit. He watched Walter from his office window as usual. Mop in hand, hoodie over his head. Kids surrounding him like gravity. "He doesn't belong here," Miller muttered. "He's not faculty. He's not cleared. This is a liability waiting to happen." Coach Ramirez looked up from his notes. "He's helping these kids. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" Miller's eyes narrowed. "There's something about him. Something he's not telling us." The night before the tournament, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked over the hills. Inside the school, the lights flickered once. Twice. Walter sat alone in the equipment room, hands wrapped in white tape. Not for training this time, but for memory. The tape reminded him of something simple. Control. Ritual. Focus. He stared at his reflection in the steel lockers. Not the same man from 10 years ago. Older, slower, but deeper. He reached into his coat pocket. The picture of Eli. His son. He whispered, "You'd be 20 now." Then a knock on the door. It was Ava. She hesitated. "Coach Ramirez said I could find you here." Walter smiled gently. "What is it, Ava?" She stepped in, eyes wet. They found a spot for me. A foster home. I leave Monday." "That's good," Walter said. "You deserve safety." Ava nodded, then looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why do you help us?" Walter paused. "Because I see myself in you. All of you." She frowned. "You weren't like us." He looked away. "I was. I just didn't have anyone to tell me I mattered. Until it was too late." Ava blinked. "Too late?" Walter tapped the picture in his hand. "My son never got to know me. All he had was letters and bedtime calls from desert barracks." Then a roadside blast took everything. The silence hung like smoke. "But if I can help you," Walter said softly, "maybe I haven't lost everything." 2. Tournament Day. The Tri-State Invitational was held in a massive indoor stadium across the border in Ohio. 30 schools. 12 mats. Hundreds of screaming fans. When the Blackridge team walked in, mostly unknowns hand, me, down gear. Duct tape on their headgear. They looked out of place. Until they started winning. One after another. The underdogs tore through the brackets. Walter stood at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, saying little. Just nods, hand signals, the smallest encouragements. Then came the final match. Walter Cain vs. Jason Cross, the reigning state champ from an elite private academy. As Logan stepped onto the mat, Jason sneered. "You're the kid who got thrown by the janitor, right?" Logan smirked. "Yeah. Best thing that ever happened to me." The whistle blew. They collided like freight trains. Jason was fast. Technical, trained since age 6. But Logan had something else. Walter, every parry, every pivot, every inch of the mat. He'd already lived it in morning drills. He didn't wrestle with ego. He wrestled with honor. But late in the third period, Logan made a mistake. A wrong grip. And Jason took advantage, lifting him into the air for a crushing throw. And then, crack. Logan's knee twisted awkwardly. He collapsed. Screams from the crowd. The ref rushed over, but Logan gritted his teeth. "Don't stop the clock," he hissed. "Let me finish." The ref hesitated. And in that second, Walter stepped out of the corner, not as a coach, not as a janitor, but as a father. He crouched beside Logan, whispered something into his ear. Logan nodded, then stood, limping, but eyes blazing. The match resumed, and in the final 10 seconds, Logan faked left, ducked under, spun behind, and pinned Jason to the mat with a roar that echoed through the stadium. 2-2 Blackridge High exploded. Students flooded the mat. Coach Ramirez wept openly. Logan sat in the middle of it all, battered but victorious. And Walter, he stood quietly, hands in his pockets, watching the moment unfold. And then, the announcer did something no one expected. He called him forward. "Ladies and gentlemen." The voice boomed. "Please welcome Walter Cain, decorated U.S. veteran, former Olympic team trainer, and the man behind Blackridge's miracle season." The entire stadium rose, a standing ovation. Not for a coach, not for a legend, but for a janitor who chose kindness when the world forgot him. 2. Back at the school, weeks later, Walter still cleaned the hallways, still wore the same jacket, still whistled the same old tune. But something had changed. The whispers were gone. Now, they called him by name, Walter, and sometimes, Coach. Spring crept into Blackridge like a second chance. The snow melted from the schoolyard edges. The cherry blossoms by the teacher's lot began to bloom. Inside the gym, the banners from the tree, State Invitational, still hung proudly. Blue and gold, curling slightly at the corners, like they were breathing. But the biggest change wasn't in the building. It was in them. The students walked straighter now, smiled more, helped each other without asking. And every morning, you could hear the rustle of mats being unrolled before the sun rose. Kids who used to skip class, now begging to practice before homeroom. Walter never asked for thanks. He still mopped the floors after they cleared out. Still cleaned the broken vending machine that no one used. But something about him had shifted, too. He laughed more. He started bringing in old VHS tapes from Olympic bouts, showing the students how the greats move like water. And one morning, for the first time since he'd taken the job at Blackridge, he wore his old Marine jacket. The same one he'd folded away after Kabul. The same one that smelled faintly of desert wind and old pain. Then came the visitor. It was a Thursday when Principal Harris knocked on the equipment room door. Walter looked up from where he was repairing a broken weight bench. "You've got company," Harris said. "Says it's important." The Walter stood, wiping his hands with a cloth. "Ooh." But the voice that answered wasn't Harris's. It was deep, familiar. "You still limping, ghost?" Walter froze, then stepped out slowly. Across the hallway stood a tall, broad-shouldered man in a tan trench coat, with silver hair and a slight burn scar down one cheek. Captain Elias Brooks, the last surviving member of Walter's old unit. 2. They didn't hug. They just stared for a long time. Then Walter spoke. "Thought you were in Virginia." Brooks nodded. "I was. Retired last year. I heard about the tournament." Walter chuckled softly. "Didn't think you were the viral video type." Brooks smiled. "Wasn't. Till I saw you throw that cocky kid like a rag doll." A pause. Then Brooks's voice softened. "You look good, Walt." Walter looked away, still sweeping floors. "No," Brooks said. "You're rebuilding people." 2. They sat on the bleachers long after school let out, talking about the past. The pain, the desert sun, the day everything went black and Walter carried 3 men out of a burning convoy. The day he stopped speaking for nearly a year. "I couldn't save them all," Walter whispered. "You saved who you could," Brooks replied. "But I'm telling you, what you're doing now, it matters more." Walter didn't reply. He just stared at the mats, empty now, quiet, lit only by the faint evening sun. 2-2 that weekend, a decision was made. Coach Ramirez stood beside Walter in the gym office, holding a printed letter with an official stamp. They've offered you the head coaching position, he said. Full time. Starting next semester. Walter blinked. What about you? I asked them to give it to you. I'll move back to New York. My mom's sick. Walter opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned the letter in his hand. A lifetime ago, he was a soldier, then a ghost, then a janitor. Now they wanted him to lead again. He walked the halls of Blackridge that night, slowly, remembering. He passed the trophy case, the faded photos of the old wrestling teams. And there, tucked between a dusty plaque and a yellowed newspaper clipping, someone had slipped in a new picture. A team photo. The current squad, sweaty and smiling, with Walter standing behind them, arms folded, his old Marine jacket half-zipped. He stared at it for a long moment, then reached up and gently straightened it. On Monday morning, Walter walked into the gym wearing a whistle around his neck, no mop, no overalls, just a clipboard, and a new name embroidered on his black windbreaker. Coach Cain, 2-2 at the edge of the room. Ava sat cross-legged, helping Jeremy stretch his arms. Malik was taping Logan's knee. Ruby passed out water bottles with a grin, and Logan, stronger now, steadier, stood and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Morning, Coach." Walter smiled. "Let's begin." Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the parking lot, Walter stood alone again. But this time, he wasn't mopping. He was watching the team exit the school, laughing, backpacks slung, futures ahead. A hand tugged at his sleeve. It was Jeremy. "Coach Cain?" the boy asked. "Yeah." Jeremy reached into his hoodie pocket and handed Walter a folded slip of paper. "I made something for you." Walter opened it slowly. Crayon, slanted letters, a drawing of the whole team on a podium. In the corner, a figure with a mop in one hand and a gold medal in the other. Underneath, Jeremy had written, "You saved us." Walter didn't say a word. He just looked out toward the field and smiled. A long, quiet, soul-deep smile. Pooh. Sometimes, the people we overlook are the ones carrying the heaviest stories. Walter reminded us that true strength isn't in medals or fame. It's in quiet kindness, in showing up, in lifting others when no one's watching. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for giving your time. We'll see you in the next one.